Mia Sullivan didn't believe in destiny or soulmates or magical connections until the day she asked a stranger for a hug in the middle of the street during a full-blown panic attack and felt peace, as if all her problems vanished for a second, and he felt it too. Damien Cross, billionaire, CEO, the most powerful man in the country, felt like he was in heaven, in the arms of a stranger. But after she found out who he was and how badly things could go for her, she ran, but it was too late. Because Damien wasn't a man who let important things slip away. He'd already decided he was going to find her, no matter what it took.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Kay, the creator of this channel. And today I want to give a very special thank you to our subscriber Strez, who made a donation to the channel. Thank you so much, Strez. This means so much to me. And if you want to appear in the next video, just make a donation to the channel.
Chapter 1. Desperate Hug and Inexplicable Connection.
If this is what peace feels like, then walking away from you won't be possible.
The phone vibrated in my pocket for the third time in less than a minute, and I already knew something was wrong before I even looked at the screen. Nobody insists like that unless it's urgent, unless it's the kind of news that changes everything in a matter of seconds. My fingers trembled when I grabbed the device, and the name on the display made my stomach turn. Mount Sinai Hospital. I answered without breathing. The voice on the other end was too professional, too cold, and each word fell like a stone on my chest. Miss Sullivan, this is Dr. Martinez from Mount Sinai. Sophia White was admitted to the emergency room about 20 minutes ago. There was an accident, a serious accident. You need to come immediately. The entire world seemed to slow down around me, as if someone had pressed pause on reality, and I was stuck in that horrible moment, in that phrase that kept repeating in my head non-stop. Sophia. Accident. Serious. The words mixed together, lost their meaning, gained too much weight. Is she alive? My voice came out hoarse, broken, almost unrecognizable. There was a pause on the other end, a pause too long that made me want to scream. Yes, but her condition is critical. Please, come as quickly as possible. The call dropped before I could say anything, and the silence that came after was deafening. I stood there in the middle of the sidewalk, people rushing past me, horns honking in the distance, the smell of coffee and pollution mixed in New York's hot air. Everything continued normal for the rest of the world, but for me, the ground had disappeared from under my feet. My breathing started to fail. The air simply wouldn't enter my lungs properly, no matter how hard I tried to pull it in. I felt the familiar tightness in my chest, that knot that started small and grew until it took over everything, until it suffocated any rational thought. Not now, please, not now. Sophia needed me. I needed to get to her, needed to be lucid and strong, but my body had other plans. I stumbled to the side alley between two buildings, away from the curious looks of passers-by, and leaned my back against the cold brick wall. My hands shook violently as I tried to count to 10. Do those breathing exercises that never worked when I needed them most. 1, 2, 3, but the numbers got lost in the confusion of my mind, replaced by horrible images of what could have happened to Sophia. The panic came like a giant wave, dragging me down, drowning any trace of control I still had. My vision started to blur at the edges, small bright stars dancing in my line of sight. I was completely losing control, and the only thing I could think about was that I needed to be at the hospital, needed to see Sophia, but couldn't even keep myself standing. Are you okay? The voice came from somewhere to my left, deep and masculine, loaded with a genuine concern that penetrated through the fog of panic that was consuming me. I turned my head with effort and saw a man approaching, tall and broad-shouldered, with striking features that I could barely process in my current state. No. The word came out more like a sob than an actual answer. I can't. Breathe. He knelt in front of me, and even through my blurred vision, I could see he was studying me carefully, as if he was calculating what would be the best way to help me. Okay, calm down, breathe with me, all right? Inhale. He demonstrated, pulling the air in slowly, and I tried to imitate the movement, but my lungs simply refused to cooperate. It's not working. I need... I looked at him again, really looked this time, and there was something in those dark eyes that made me feel that maybe, just maybe, he could help me somehow. He was a complete stranger, someone I'd never seen before in my life, but in that desperate moment, I didn't care about any of that. The words came out before I could think about them, before the rational part of my brain could intervene and remind me that this was completely insane. Just give me a hug, please, for a second. I need... Just... My voice broke at the end, tears streaming down my face without me being able to control them. He paused for a moment that seemed to stretch for an eternity, and I saw surprise cross his face, followed by something I couldn't identify. Then, without saying a word, he opened his arms. "Come here." I didn't hesitate. I threw myself against him with a force that probably caught him by surprise, my arms wrapping around his waist as I buried my face against the soft fabric of the shirt he was wearing. He smelled like something expensive and masculine, a mix of wood and spices that was completely different from anything I'd ever smelled before. And then it happened. The moment his arms closed around me, firm but surprisingly gentle, something changed. The panic that was suffocating me started to recede like a tide, leaving behind only a strange and inexplicable calm. My breathing, which had been erratic and desperate seconds ago, started to stabilize, returning to an almost normal rhythm. The tightness in my chest loosened, and for the first time since I answered that phone call, I managed to pull air completely into my lungs. It was as if the entire world had stopped spinning for a moment, as if all the problems and worries that were crushing me had simply disappeared. There was no more fear, no more panic, nothing else but him and the incredible feeling of safety that emanated from his body against mine. "What is this?" I whispered against his chest, not really expecting an answer, just letting the words escape because I needed to say something, needed to acknowledge the complete absurdity of what was happening. I felt his body tense for a second, and then he murmured something so low I almost didn't hear it. I stayed there for a few more seconds, or maybe they were minutes. I honestly didn't know, enjoying that surreal peace before reality came back to hit me with full force. When I finally pulled away, the first thing I did was really look at him, and my God, he was absolutely gorgeous. Features sculpted as if someone had spent hours working on every detail, dark and intense eyes that seemed to see through me, dark hair perfectly styled. The suit he wore probably cost more than my 3 months' rent, and the watch on his wrist. It was a Patek Philippe. I knew enough about fashion photography to recognize expensive pieces when I saw them. Embarrassment hit me like a truck. Oh God. I ran my hands over my face and trying to wipe away the tears and probably smearing everything with smudged mascara. I hugged a complete stranger on the street. "I'm sorry, so much." I took a deep breath, trying to organize my chaotic thoughts. "I got bad news. My best friend, there was an accident, and I panicked, and you were there, and God, this is so embarrassing." To my complete astonishment, he didn't seem bothered. In fact, there was something almost stunned in his expression, as if he too was processing something that didn't make sense. "It's not, you were panicking. You needed help." "I helped," he paused, and then asked with a softness that caught me off guard. "Your friend, is she okay?" The tears came back with full force when I heard the question. "I don't know. I need to get to the hospital. Now." I made a move to turn, but his voice stopped me. "Wait." There was an urgency in that single word that made me pause. When I looked back at him, I saw he'd taken a step toward me, his hand extending as if he wanted to touch me, but thinking better of it at the last second. "Your name?" The question caught me completely by surprise. "Why?" He looked at me for a long moment, and there was something in that look that made my heart race in a completely different way from the panic before, because I felt something. "When I hugged you, and I want to know who you are." My stomach knotted. He had felt it too, that inexplicable peace, that strange connection that made no sense. Part of me wanted to stay there and find out more about what the hell had happened between us, but the rational part, the part that was still terrified about Sophia, won. Mia. Just Mia. I took a step back, putting distance between us before I did something even more insane, like ask him to hug me again. I really need to go. Sorry. Again. I turned and started running toward the main street, my heart beating hard not just from the running, but from the intense look I could feel on my back as I walked away. I didn't look back. If I did, I knew I might not be able to leave, and Sophia needed me now more than ever. Hours later, I was sitting in an uncomfortable plastic chair in the hospital waiting room, still trying to process everything that had happened. Sophia was stable, but in an induced coma. The doctors had said it was serious, but that she had a chance. I should be focused only on that, only on my best friend fighting for her life a few meters away. But my mind kept going back to him, to the stranger from the hug, to that impossible feeling of peace I'd felt in his arms, as if all my problems had simply evaporated for those precious seconds, to the way he had looked at me when I was leaving, as if I were something precious he didn't want to let slip away. I leaned my head against the cold wall behind me and closed my eyes. What had that been? And why, even now, with everything that was happening with Sophia, couldn't I stop thinking about him? Somewhere on the other side of the city, in a penthouse office overlooking all of Manhattan, Damian Cross was sitting behind his imported mahogany desk, staring at the computer screen without really seeing anything that was there. Lucas walked in without knocking, as he always did, holding a tablet and a confused expression. "Boss, the meeting with the Tokyo investors is in 10 minutes. Are you prepared? Cancel it." The word came out automatic, without hesitation. Lucas froze in the middle of the office. "I'm sorry. Cancel the meeting." Damian finally looked away from the computer screen and focused on his assistant. "Can't I need you to find someone for me?" "Who?" Lucas already had the tablet ready, but there was a line of concern forming between his eyebrows. "A woman named Mia. Just Mia." Damian stood up, walking to the huge window that dominated an entire wall of the office. "Today, around 3 in the afternoon, 5th Avenue, near the alley between buildings 340 and 342. He paused, running his hand through his hair in a rare gesture of agitation. "Security cameras. Facial recognition. Whatever's necessary, just find her." "Boss." Lucas sounded genuinely confused now, which was rare considering how many years he'd worked for Damian. "Who is this woman? Is she a threat? Does this have to do with some corporate investigation?" Damian continued looking at the city below, at the thousands of lights that were starting to turn on as evening fell. "No, she's not a threat." He touched his own chest, where he could still feel the echo of that impossible sensation. "I don't know what she is, but I need to know. Find her. Today." Lucas was silent for a moment, clearly processing the completely unusual nature of that request. Then, because he was good at what he did and knew when not to question his boss, he simply nodded. "Yes, boss. I'll find her." He left the office, leaving Damian alone with his chaotic thoughts. Damian touched his chest again, where his heart was still beating in a rhythm he didn't recognize. For the first time in years, since insomnia had become his constant companion, since the stress and pressure of building an empire had become his entire life, he had felt something different, peace, complete and absolute. In the arms of a complete stranger who had asked for a hug in the middle of a panic attack. "What did you do to me, Mia?" he murmured to the cold glass of the window, his own reflection looking back at him with an expression that bordered on obsession. And in that moment, Damian Cross, the man who had built a tech empire from scratch, who had billions in the bank and could have anything he wanted with a simple snap of his fingers, realized he had found the only thing money couldn't buy, and he wasn't going to let her slip away.
This chapter was proof of how two people can have their destinies crossed in the most unexpected way possible.
Chapter 2. Obsessive Search and Reunion.
I looked for you because something between us refuses to be ignored.
When the sun started to rise through the hospital room window, I was still sitting in the same uncomfortable chair next to Sophia's bed, holding her hand tightly as if my touch could somehow bring her back. 18 hours had passed since I arrived running, desperate and still shaking from the remnants of the panic attack, and I hadn't moved from there except to go to the bathroom. The constant sound of the monitors was almost hypnotic now, that beep, beep, beep confirming that her heart was still beating, that she was still here with me. Her face was too pale, almost the same color as the hospital's white sheets, and there were tubes everywhere, connecting her to machines I didn't even know the names of. She looked so small in that bed, so fragile, and that was wrong on so many levels because Sophia was the strongest person I knew. "Oh, Sophia, wake up." My voice came out hoarse from crying so much, from spending hours without talking to anyone. "Please, wake up. I need you. You're my only family. You know that." The tears came back, running silently down my face. "Don't leave me. Not now. Not like this." She didn't respond, didn't even move, just stayed there, breathing through machines, completely oblivious to the world and to me. The door opened softly, and a nurse I'd already seen a few times during the night came in with a gentle but tired smile. She had deep, dark circles, and I imagined my face probably looked the same or worse. "Miss Sullivan, you need to rest. You've been here for 18 hours straight." "I can't." I squeezed Sophia's hand harder, as if that could change anything. "What if she wakes up and I'm not here? What if she needs me and I... We'll call you immediately if there's any change, I promise." The nurse approached and placed her hand on my shoulder gently. "But you're not going to help your friend if you pass out from exhaustion. Go, eat something, sleep a little. 2 hours, that's all." I wanted to argue, wanted to say I was fine, that I could stay longer, but my body was screaming for food and rest. Reluctantly, I let go of Sophia's hand and stood up, my legs protesting after so long in the same position. 2 hours. Only. The hospital cafe was depressingly sterile, with white plastic tables and chairs that seemed to have been chosen specifically to be uncomfortable. I grabbed a horrible coffee that had probably been in the pot for hours and sat in a corner, away from the other people who looked as tired and defeated as I felt. As I stirred the coffee mechanically, my mind started to wander to places I'd tried to avoid for the last 18 hours. To yesterday, to the alley, to him, the stranger who had hugged me, the hug that had been so inexplicable. I could still feel the sensation if I closed my eyes. That sudden and overwhelming peace that had taken over me the moment his arms closed around me, as if someone had pressed a reset button on my brain and all the chaotic thoughts had simply stopped. It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. And he had felt it too. I had seen it in his eyes, in that stunned expression when we separated, as if he was as confused as I was about what had just happened. "Who was he?" I murmured to the bad coffee, not expecting an answer. A handsome man in an expensive suit who had hugged me in the middle of a panic attack and made me feel safe for the first time in years. And I had run away without even asking his name, without even thanking him properly. I shook my head, trying to push those thoughts away. Sophia. I needed to focus on Sophia. She was fighting for her life a few floors above, and I was here thinking about a complete stranger. What kind of friend did that make me? But no matter how hard I tried to convince myself to stop, my mind kept going back to that moment, to that impossible connection. On the other side of the city, in an office that occupied the top floor of one of Manhattan's most expensive buildings, Damien Cross was having surprisingly similar thoughts. He hadn't slept. Again. But this time it wasn't because of the chronic insomnia that had tormented him for years. It was because of her. That woman with frightened eyes and trembling hands who had asked for a hug and completely changed something inside him that he didn't even know existed. The office door opened, and Lucas walked in with his ever-present tablet and an expression Damien knew well, that, "I have information and you won't believe it. Look." "Boss." I found her. Damien stood up so fast his chair spun backward. "Who is she?" Lucas looked at the tablet, sliding his finger across the screen. "Mia Sullivan, 25 years old, freelance photographer, works mainly with small events and some editorial work, lives in Brooklyn, a small apartment in a building that's seen better days. Financial situation," he grimaced. "Difficult would be an understatement. She's struggling to keep up with bills." Damien absorbed every piece of information as if it were gold. Mia. Her name was Mia Sullivan. And the friend, Sophia White, Mia's best friend since college, admitted to Mount Sinai yesterday after a serious car accident. She's in an induced coma, critical condition. Lucas looked up from the tablet. And, boss, the hospital security cameras caught Mia today. She's still there, right now. Something tightened in Damien's chest, imagining her alone in that hospital, worried about her friend, probably without having slept or eaten properly. Address of the hospital. Lucas blinked. You're going personally? Yes, now prepare the car. Boss. Lucas closed the tablet and looked at Damien with an expression that bordered on concern. You've known this woman for literally 2 minutes, one hug on the street, and you're obsessed. This isn't normal for you. Damien grabbed the jacket that was hanging on the back of the chair, putting it on with precise movements. I know it's not normal, and I don't care. He looked directly at Lucas, and there was an intensity in his eyes that made the assistant take a step back. I felt something yesterday. Something real. Something I've never felt before. And I need to understand what if it's just, I don't know, a moment, adrenaline, her situation, the emotional state. It wasn't. Damien cut him off. Absolute. Lucas, I haven't slept properly in years. My mind never shuts off, never stops running. It's a constant scream of thoughts and worries and plans. He paused, touching his own chest. But for 30 seconds yesterday, when I hugged her, everything stopped. Complete silence. Total peace. For the first time in years. Lucas was silent for a long moment, and then sighed resignedly. The car is waiting for you downstairs. I was leaving the cafe, still holding the half-full cup of horrible coffee, when I bumped into someone hard enough to almost spill everything. Sorry, I wasn't looking. I looked up and the words died in my throat. It was him. The stranger from the hug, from the alley, from yesterday, here at the hospital. You? The word came out louder than I intended, and some people turned to look. What? How are you following me? He looked different in daylight, without the stress and urgency of yesterday. He was still wearing a suit, but this one was a darker shade, and there was something in his posture that screamed power and control, and he was looking at me with an intensity that made my stomach knot. No. He paused, and then an almost embarrassed expression crossed his face. Yes, I looked for you. I needed to see you again. My heart started beating faster, a mix of anger, confusion, and something else I didn't want to name. Why? We met yesterday for 2 minutes. One hug, and you... Wait. The realization hit me like a slap. How did you find me? I didn't give you my last name, didn't say where I was. How did you... Security cameras, he said, and had the decency to look a bit embarrassed. Facial recognition, and... They private investigator. I took a step back, the coffee forgotten in my hand. You investigated me. You're a stalker, an actual stalker. No, He ran his hand through his hair, messing up the previous perfection, and somehow that made him seem more human. Mia, I know how this looks. It looks crazy. It looks obsessive. But yesterday, when I hugged you, I felt something I've never felt before in my life. That doesn't justify it, I practically yelled, and several people were definitely looking now. You can't just investigate people, use cameras and facial recognition. This is invasion of privacy. This is... Peace, he interrupted, his voice low but loaded with emotion. I felt peace, complete and total. That made me pause, because I knew exactly what he was talking about. I had felt the same thing. He took a step toward me, and I didn't back away this time. Mia, I haven't slept properly in years. Chronic insomnia, constant stress. My mind never stops, never shuts off. It's always a million thoughts running at the same time, always planning, always worrying. His dark eyes locked me in place. But yesterday, in those 30 seconds I hugged you, silence, total. For the first time in years, my mind was quiet. And he shook his head, as if he couldn't believe what he was saying, and I need to understand what you are. To me, my heart was beating so hard, I was sure he could hear it. Part of me wanted to yell at him again, send him away, tell him he was crazy. But the other part, the honest part, knew I had felt exactly the same thing. I felt it too. The words came out low, almost a whisper. But that doesn't change anything. You stalked me, and I have a friend dying up there. I can't deal with this now, with you, with whatever this is. His expression changed instantly to concern. Your friend, how is she? In a coma. Critical. I felt the tears coming back and pressed the heels of my hands against my eyes, frustrated at being so emotional. And I should be up there with her, not down here arguing with a handsome stalker. There was a pause, and then he spoke softly. How you think I'm handsome? Despite everything, despite the absurdity of the entire situation, I laughed. It was a wet and slightly hysterical laugh, but still a laugh. That's really the point you chose to focus on. A small smile touched the corners of his mouth, and my God, that completely transformed his face. Sorry, you're right. Not the moment. The smile disappeared, replaced by seriousness again. Mia, I'll go. I'll respect what you're asking. But he took a card from the inner pocket of his jacket and extended it to me. If you need anything, anything at all, better doctors, second opinion, treatments, money, whatever, call me. I'll help. I took the card somewhat hesitantly, and what I saw there made my stomach drop. Damien Cross, CEO, Cross Tech. I looked up at him, shocked. Oh my God, you're a billionaire. And I hugged you and asked, oh God, this is so embarrassing. And it was the best hug of my life, he said simply, as if he was stating a fact. Take care of your friend, and when you can, when you're ready, call, please. Before I could respond, he turned and started walking toward the exit, his straight back and perfect posture making several people look as he passed. I stood there, holding the card with trembling fingers, my mind trying to process everything that had just happened. Damien Cross. The Damien Cross. One of the richest and most powerful men in the country had looked for me because I had hugged him during a panic attack. What is happening? I whispered to the card, to the cold coffee in my hand, to the universe in general. Nobody answered. But when I looked at the door he had left through, my heart was still beating too fast, and my skin still tingled where he had been too close. And the scariest part of me already wanted to call that number on the card.
I feel like our protagonist is in love, but I can't prove it.
Chapter 3. Sophia wakes up and mystery deepens.
What if this connection isn't coincidence, but something neither of us is ready to understand yet?
A week passed like a thick fog I could barely get through, each day blending with the previous one in an exhausting routine of hospital, uncomfortable chairs and the constant sound of monitors. I had lost count of how many cups of horrible coffee I'd had, how many times I'd held Sophia's hand, waiting for some sign, any sign that she was coming back to me. And then, on a Thursday morning that started like all the others, it happened. I was sitting in the same chair as always, flipping through an old magazine someone had left in the waiting room without really reading anything, when I heard a low sound coming from the bed. My head turned so fast my neck cracked, and what I saw made my heart practically jump out of my chest. Sophia's eyes were open. Sophia! I threw myself to the side of the bed, dropping the magazine on the floor without caring, tears already streaming down my face before I even fully processed what was happening. You're back, oh my God, you're back. She blinked a few times, confused, her eyes still a bit glazed from the medications and the time spent unconscious. Time here. Her voice came out hoarse and weak, almost unrecognizable, but it was her voice and that was all that mattered. What? Where? Hospital. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding both her hands now, squeezing as if that could keep her here with me forever. You were in an accident. Car accident. You've been in a coma for 8 days, Sophia. 8 days that were the worst of my life. I sobbed without being able to control myself. But you came back. You woke up. Sophia kept blinking, and I could see her trying to piece things together, trying to remember. I remember. The car. I was driving and the brakes failed. I tried to stop, but I couldn't, and there was a truck and... She stopped, her breathing speeding up with the memory. Calm down, calm down. I ran my hand through her hair gently, trying to calm her even though I was still shaking with emotion myself. You're okay now. You're alive. You're here. That's all that matters. She took a few deep breaths and then really looked at me, those brown eyes I knew so well studying my face carefully, and then she frowned. Mia, you're different. My heart jumped. Different how? Tired. She squeezed my hands weakly. You have huge dark circles, but also... She tilted her head, confused. Light. There's something different about you. Something changed. I immediately thought of him, of Damien, of the hug, of the card that had been in my wallet for a week, that I looked at every day but had never had the courage to use. It's just relief. I lied, or kind of lied. You woke up. Of course I'm different. Sophia looked at me for another long moment, and I saw suspicion cross her face, but she was too tired to press. Okay, she whispered, her eyes starting to get heavy again. I'm tired. Sleep. I kissed her forehead, relief still flooding me in waves. I'll be here when you wake up again. Promise. Days passed, and Sophia gradually improved, the doctors removing tubes and reducing medications as she regained strength. I had finally gone back to my apartment after they assured me she was stable, that the worst had passed, but even so I spent most of my time at the hospital. It was nighttime, on a Saturday, and I was finally in my tiny apartment in Brooklyn, sitting on the old couch I'd bought at a second-hand store years ago. The TV was on some show I wasn't paying attention to, and in my hand was his card, Damien Cross, CEO, Cross Tech. I had looked at that card so many times in the past week that the edges were already a bit worn from how much I handled it. I hadn't called. Not once. But I also hadn't thrown it away, and that said more than I wanted to admit. I thought about him every day, about the hug, about that impossible peace that had taken over me, about the way he had looked at me at the hospital, as if I was something precious and rare, about the vulnerability in his voice when he admitted he had slept properly for the first time in years, and the connection, that strange and inexplicable feeling that something was pulling us toward each other, like magnets that couldn't resist the magnetic attraction. My phone rang suddenly, making me jump and almost drop the card. I looked at the screen expecting to see the hospital or maybe a known number, but what I saw was just unknown number. I hesitated for a second, my thumb hovering over the answer button. Then, because I apparently liked making impulsive decisions lately, I answered, "Hello." "Hi." The voice on the other end was unmistakable, deep and smooth, and made my stomach knot immediately. "It's Damien. I know you didn't call, but I couldn't not call, sorry." My heart started beating faster, a mix of irritation and something dangerously close to happiness. "How do you have my number?" There was a guilty pause on the other end. "Investigator." Again, another pause. "Sorry, I know. Boundaries. But Mia, I need to see you again. It doesn't have to be a hug, just conversation. Coffee. Whatever you want. Please." I should refuse, should hang up on him and block the number. He had invaded my privacy again, crossed obvious boundaries, and any sensible person would tell him to go to hell. "Why?" I asked, my voice coming out lower than I intended. "Why me? You're a billionaire. CEO of one of the biggest tech companies in the country. You can have any woman you want. Why the girl who hugged you on the street? Because since that day I sleep properly." The answer came quick and too honest to be rehearsed. "First time in years, Mia, and when I wake up, I think about you. When I'm working, I think about you. When I should be focused on billion-dollar meetings, I'm thinking about you." He took a deep breath, and I don't understand it. But I want to understand, and I think you want to too, or you wouldn't have kept my card. How did he know I'd kept it? But then I realized it was obvious. If I had thrown it away, I wouldn't be having this conversation now. "This is crazy," I murmured, more to myself than to him. "I know." He agreed readily. Completely insane. But coffee. Tomorrow. 3 in the afternoon. I closed my eyes, fighting an internal battle between what my head was screaming at me to do and what my heart desperately wanted. The heart won. Okay. Coffee. I opened my eyes and looked at the card in my hand. But no more investigators, no stalking, no finding out things about me I didn't tell you. Just normal. Can you do normal? I can try. There was a touch of humor in his voice now. Coffee near the hospital. I'll send the address. Okay. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. Tomorrow then. Tomorrow, he confirmed, and there was something warm in that single word that made my skin tingle. Good night, Mia. Good night, Damien. I hung up and stared at the phone as if it had betrayed me. What am I doing? I asked the empty apartment, the old couch, and the peeling walls that were silent witnesses to my messy life. Nobody answered, but when I lay down that night, still holding his card, I slept better than I had in weeks. I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early the next day, too nervous to stay home waiting. It was a small and cozy place a few blocks from the hospital, with dark wood tables and the comforting smell of fresh coffee in the air. I chose a table near the window where I could see the street, my fingers drumming nervously on the surface as I waited. When he walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. No suit, no intimidating aura of powerful CEO. Damien was wearing jeans, and a casual button-down shirt in a dark blue that made his eyes seem even more intense. His hair was a bit less styled than the other times, as if he'd run his hand through it nervously. He was absolutely gorgeous. Hi, he said when he got to the table, and there was a shyness in him that was completely unexpected and strangely adorable. Hi, I responded, trying not to look as nervous as I felt. You're different, no suit. A small smile touched his lips. I thought it would be less intimidating. Did it work? I couldn't help the nervous laugh that escaped. Maybe. He sat in the chair across from me, and I immediately felt that sensation again, that inexplicable pull, as if there was an invisible thread connecting us that got stronger the closer we were. From his slightly widened eyes, he had felt it too. We ordered coffee, and for a few minutes we sat in slightly uncomfortable silence, neither of us knowing exactly how to start. Then he spoke first. How's your friend? Sophia. The fact that he remembered her name warmed me inside in a strange way. Better. Much better. She woke up a few days ago. The doctors say the recovery will be long, but she'll be okay. That's great. And he seemed genuinely relieved. You must be lighter. I am. I stirred my coffee, watching the dark liquid swirl in the cup. She's my only real family, you know? My parents died when I was a kid. I was raised by an aunt who never really wanted me. Sophia is everything. I'm sorry, he said quietly, and when I looked up, I saw genuine empathy in his eyes. About your parents and your aunt. It was a long time ago, I shrugged, trying to seem casual about something that still hurt sometimes. What about you? Family? My father. He looked at his own cup. But we haven't spoken in years. He wanted me to follow in his footsteps in the family business, traditional industry. When I decided to make my own path with technology, he didn't support it. Said I was wasting my potential. Building a billion-dollar empire seems like the opposite of wasting potential, I commented, and he laughed, a low and genuine sound that made something warm spread through my chest. You would say that. He looked at me directly, and that intensity was back. But for him, not following family tradition was worse than failing. We kept talking for hours, about photography and how I'd fallen in love with capturing moments through lenses, about his company and the constant pressure of always innovating, always being ahead, about loneliness, mine of never really belonging anywhere, his of being surrounded by people but still feeling completely alone, and about the feeling, that strange attraction that pulsed between us like something alive. Do you feel it? he eventually asked, leaning a bit closer across the table. When I'm near, like a magnet. My heart accelerated. Yes, I admitted quietly, and it was a relief to finally say it out loud. And it scares me, because it doesn't make sense. We've known each other for days. What if we explored this? His eyes didn't leave mine. Slowly, no pressure. Just see where this goes. What if it goes wrong? The question came out before I could think better of it. What if it's just, I don't know, initial chemistry that disappears? Then we stop. He extended his hand across the table, stopping centimeters from mine, waiting. But what if it goes right? His voice got lower, more intense. Mia, I've never felt this for anyone, and I don't want to lose it without at least trying. I looked at his hand so close to mine, and then at his eyes. My head was screaming all the reasons why this was a bad idea. He was too rich, too powerful, from a completely different world than mine. But my heart, that idiotic and romantic organ, desperately wanted to reach for that hand and see what would happen. The heart won. I put my hand in his, and the sensation was electric, like completing a circuit, like coming home. Okay, I whispered, barely believing what I was saying. We'll try. Slowly. The smile that lit up his face was absolutely beautiful, completely transforming his serious features into something warm and young. Slowly, he repeated, squeezing my hand gently. Promise. And sitting in that small cafe, with my hand in his and that impossible connection pulsing between us, I really believed that maybe, just maybe, this whole crazy thing could work out. Chapter 4. Connection Revealed and Real Beginning.
One desperate hug changed everything. Imagine what forever will do.
The weeks that followed that coffee were like something out of a dream I was afraid to wake from. One of those dreams so vivid and perfect that you resist opening your eyes because you know reality will never be that good. Damien and I saw each other almost every day, sometimes for dinner at discreet restaurants, where he insisted on reserving the most private table, away from curious looks and intrusive cameras. Sometimes just to walk through Central Park while we talked about everything and nothing at the same time, our hands eventually finding each other and intertwining as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Each meeting made the connection between us grow in a way that defied any logic or reason, as if we were unraveling layers of each other and discovering that, beneath all the superficial differences that should separate us, we were surprisingly alike. He understood my loneliness, that feeling of never really belonging anywhere, because he felt the same despite being surrounded by people constantly. I understood his pressure of always having to be perfect, always having to be in control, because I'd spent my whole life trying to prove I was good enough. And the feeling only got stronger, that inexplicable peace when we were together, that magnetic pull that made my heart race every time he walked into a room, every time our eyes met across a crowd. It wasn't just physical attraction, although God knew that was there too, pulsing beneath the surface of every accidental touch, every lingering look, every time he got too close and I forgot how to breathe. It was something deeper, scarier, more real than anything I'd ever felt before in my life. He was sleeping better, he told me one night while we were sitting on the old couch in my tiny apartment, my head resting on his shoulder as we watched some movie neither of us was really paying attention to. For the first time in years, the insomnia that tormented him had given him a break, and he woke up rested instead of exhausted, his mind finally quiet instead of constantly screaming with 1,000 different thoughts at once. And me, I felt safe in a way I'd never experienced before, as if all the broken pieces of my life had finally found a place to fit, as if I'd finally found the place where I belonged, in his arms, next to him, with him. Sophia had been discharged from the hospital 2 weeks ago, and although she was still recovering physically, doing physical therapy 3 times a week and taking an absurd amount of medications, she was already strong enough to go back to being the meddling and perceptive best friend I knew and loved. I was visiting her at her apartment, helping organize her prescriptions in alphabetical order, because she was obsessive like that, and doing grocery shopping since she still couldn't drive, when she stopped me in the middle of the kitchen with a penetrating look I knew very well. "Girl," she said, crossing her arms over her chest and studying me with that investigator expression she always used when she knew I was hiding something important. "You're glowing, like, literally radiant as if you'd swallowed a light bulb. So are you going to tell me who it is, or do I have to guess? Because I always find out, you know that." I felt the heat rise to my cheeks immediately, that traitorous blush that always gave me away when I was trying to hide something, and I tried to disguise it by turning to put the medications away in the cabinet with exaggerated concentration. "I don't know what you're talking about. Mia Sullivan, don't test me." Sophia came up to me and turned me by the shoulders with more force than someone who'd left the hospital 2 weeks ago should have, forcing me to look directly at her. "I've known you for how many years? 7, 8, and never in all that time have I seen you like this. With that idiotic glow in your eyes, with that smile you don't even realize you're wearing. So spill now or I swear I'll make you confess." I sighed, knowing there was no escaping this. Sophia was persistent when she wanted to be, more stubborn than a mule when it came to discovering secrets, and she clearly really wanted to know what was happening with me. And honestly, I wanted to tell her. I wanted to share this absurd happiness I was feeling with the only person in the world who really knew me. "It's Damien." The words came out in a sigh. "The other guy I told you about, from the hug." Her eyes widened so much I thought they'd pop out of her face, and then a huge and mischievous smile took over her entire face. "The cute billionaire stalker. You're dating him, and you didn't tell me before." "Don't call him a stalker," I complained, calm, but couldn't hold back the smile that was trying to escape. He stopped that. "And yes, we're trying. Seeing where it goes." "And where is it going?" she asked, pulling me by the hand to sit on the couch next to her, holding both my hands with barely contained excitement, practically bouncing in place. "Tell me everything, every detail. Don't skip anything or I'll die of curiosity. It's going to—" I paused, looking for the right words to describe something that seemed too big to fit into simple words, and then just let the truth out because there was no other way to say it. "Sophia, I think I'm falling in love with him, or maybe I'm already completely in love. I don't know for sure. It's all so fast and intense and doesn't make any logical sense. But when I'm with him, it's like everything finally makes sense for the first time in my life." "It's about time," she practically yelled, squeezing my hands so hard it hurt a little. "Mia, you deserve this. You deserve all this happiness and more. You deserve someone who makes you glow like this, who makes you smile that idiotic way you're smiling now. Does he treat you well? Because if he doesn't, I'll personally kick his billionaire ass." "Very well," I answered, and it was so true it hurt in my chest from how intense it was. Sophia, he's incredible. Intense, yes. Sometimes it's almost too much, like he feels everything stronger than normal people. But he's respectful in a way that surprises me every day, kind in small ways that make me melt, real in a way I didn't expect from someone so rich and powerful. He listens when I talk about photography, as if it were the most important and fascinating thing in the world, even though he probably has billion-dollar meetings on his mind. He remembers small details I mention in passing, like that I hate coffee with too much sugar, or that I like to walk when I'm stressed. And the way he looks at me. I shook my head, feeling butterflies in my stomach just thinking about those intense dark eyes fixed on me. It's like I'm the only person in the entire universe that matters. Sophia was practically melting now, one hand on her chest dramatically. "Okay, I officially ship you two with all my soul, so stay with him. For the love of everything that's sacred, stay with this man." Then she paused, her expression getting more serious, that protective side of her appearing. "But I need to meet him, personally. Judge with my own eyes if he's really as good as you're saying, if he's good enough for my best friend." I laughed, relieved she was reacting so well, that she was happy for me instead of skeptical or worried. "You want to meet him, like a dinner or something?" "Obviously," she retorted as if it were the most obvious thing in the world, as if it were ridiculous I had asked. "Organize a dinner. Me, you, him, next week. I need to see this cute billionaire stalker with my own eyes and decide whether I approve or not." 3 days later, I was too nervous to stay still, messing with the silverware on the table for the 10th time while we waited for Damien to arrive at the restaurant. Sophia had insisted on something casual and relaxed, nothing like the fancy and expensive places Damien probably frequented. So we chose a small and cozy Italian place in Brooklyn that she'd loved forever, with red and white checkered tablecloths and candles in empty wine bottles. She was sitting across from me, completely recovered now, her eyes shining with amusement as she watched me squirm with anxiety. "Are you sweating?" she pointed out with a mischievous smile that made me want to throw the napkin at her. "I'm not," I lied blatantly, wiping my palms on my pants for the 4th or 5th time just in those last few minutes. "You are? You look like you're going to faint or throw up. Or both at the same time." She laughed, but then her face softened. "Relax, dummy. If he really loves you, he'll pass the overprotective best friend test. And if he doesn't, well, then I'll have to kill him and hide the body." Before I could respond with something equally dramatic, I saw Damien entering the restaurant, and my heart did that familiar jump that happened every time I saw him. He was dressed casually again, dark jeans that fit perfectly, and a button-down shirt in a navy blue shade that made his eyes seem even more intense and hypnotizing. The sleeves rolled up on his forearms in a way that should be illegal. No suit, no intimidating aura of powerful and untouchable CEO, just Damien. My Damien. When his eyes found mine through the crowded restaurant, the smile that lit up his face made all the nervousness in my stomach transform into warm and frantic butterflies. He came to our table with confident but not arrogant steps, and I stood up automatically to meet him halfway, as if my body were magnetized to his. "Hi," I said quietly when he got close enough, and he leaned in to kiss my cheek, a simple and chaste gesture that still made my entire skin tingle with his proximity, with his smell, with his warmth. "Hi," he responded, his voice husky and low just for me, his hand finding mine for a brief second and squeezing gently before looking over my shoulder at Sophia. I took a deep breath, prepared for whatever was going to happen, and turned to make the formal introductions. "Damien, this is Sophia, my best friend and most important person in my life. Sophia, this is Damien." He approached the table and extended his hand with a genuine smile. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you, Sophia. Mia talks about you constantly." Sophia stood up too, but instead of shaking his hand immediately, stood there for a long moment, studying him openly with those analytical eyes that didn't miss any detail. The tension at the table was palpable, and I could barely breathe as I waited for her verdict. Then she spoke, her voice calm but loaded with meaning. "So you're the guy who stalked my best friend?" I almost choked on my own air and started to open my mouth to intervene, to soften the accusation. But Damien just looked genuinely embarrassed, running his hand through his hair in a nervous gesture I'd learned to recognize as a sign of discomfort. "Yes, definitely not my proudest moment or my best decision. It was invasive and wrong, and I apologize for it." Sophia continued staring at him, but something changed in her posture. "But you stopped," when she asked, respected her boundaries. "Yes," he answered without hesitation, "and I'll continue to always respect them." "And you treat her well?" "Because if you hurt her in any way, billions or not, I'll find you and you'll regret being born." A small smile touched the corners of his mouth, but he kept his tone serious. "I treat her like the most important and precious person in my life, because that's exactly what she is." Sophia looked at him for a few more seconds that seemed to stretch for an eternity, and then finally shook his hand and sat down. "Okay, you passed. For now. But I'm watching." The relief I felt was so intense my legs almost failed. Damien looked at me with a small and reassuring smile before pulling out the chair for me, always the gentleman, and then sitting next to me. His hand found mine under the table immediately, intertwining our fingers and squeezing gently as if saying, "It's okay. We made it." The dinner was infinitely better than I could have hoped or imagined in my most optimistic scenarios. After the initial tension of the interrogation, Sophia relaxed and started asking real questions, some of them still embarrassingly direct about his intentions and what he expected from the future with us, but all coming from a place of love and protection. And Damien, to my complete relief and admiration, answered everything with brutal honesty and infinite patience, never seeming bothered or irritated by the scrutiny. They even found common ground about technology and innovation, since Sophia worked with graphic design and had strong opinions about user interface and consumer experience. I watched them talk animatedly about programs, about the future of AI in art, about how technology was changing the way we create and consume visual content, and I felt absurdly happy just seeing them get along, the two most important people in my life, connecting and finding things in common. At one point, Sophia got up to go to the bathroom, and Damien immediately turned to me, those dark eyes studying me carefully. "Do you think I passed the test?" "With flying colors," I answered, unable to hold back the giant smile. "She loves you, I can tell." "And you?" he asked quietly, his hand squeezing mine under the table. "Do you love me?" My heart accelerated with the question, with the vulnerability I could see behind those intense eyes. More than I should after such a short time. When Sophia came back and saw the two of us looking at each other that way, she just rolled her eyes with a smile. "You two are disgusting, but in a good way, the kind that makes people believe in love again." When Damien took me home later, it was past midnight, and the streets of Brooklyn were surprisingly quiet for a Saturday night. His car, a discreet black sedan that probably cost more than I made in 5 years, stopped in front of my old building with its peeling facade, but neither of us made a move to get out immediately. We sat there in comfortable silence for a few moments, just existing in the same space before I finally spoke. "Thank you for today, for being so patient with Sophia, for answering all those invasive questions without complaining. She loved you, you know. She texted me while you were paying the bill saying she completely approves." He turned to look at me, unbuckling his seatbelt so he could move more freely, those dark eyes intense even in the dim light of the car's interior. "And I loved her. Anyone who protects you like that, who cares so much about you, is someone I'll always respect and admire." He paused, his hand reaching to brush away a strand of hair that had fallen on my face in a gesture so gentle it made my heart squeeze painfully. "Mia, about us, I know it's early, that technically it's only been a few weeks we've been doing this, but I need to know where we stand, because I want more. I want you, officially, girlfriend." "Mine!" My heart raced so hard and fast I was absolutely certain he could hear it, could see my pulse accelerating in my neck. "Are you sure?" "Damien, I'm not from your world. Billionaires, giant companies, elegant social events, charity galas. I'm just a broke photographer with a tiny apartment in a building that's falling apart and—" He kissed me. He simply leaned through the center console, one hand going to the back of my neck, and pressed his lips against mine, cutting all my insecurities and doubts at the root. And my God, it was perfect. Soft, but deep. Loaded with feeling and promise and everything I didn't know I needed until that exact moment. My hands went to his hair automatically, my fingers tangling in those dark and soft strands, pulling him closer as I returned the kiss with everything I had, all the love that was growing inside me and threatening to overflow. When we finally separated, both breathing heavy and irregular, he rested his forehead against mine, eyes still closed. "You're my world, Mia." Since the hug, since that first moment, I held you and felt peace for the first time in years. And I don't want anyone else. I don't care what world you come from, how much money you have or don't have in your account, where you live or what you do. I just want you. He opened his eyes, and the intensity in there almost knocked me down. "So, do you want to try? Us? For real this time?" The tears came without warning, overflowing and streaming down my face as I laughed and cried at the same time, all the emotion that had been growing for the past weeks finally finding an outlet. "Yes, I do. Very much. More than anything." He pulled me into an awkward hug through the car's console, that hug that had started absolutely everything between us, and the peace returned like it always did, like a warm and comforting wave that washed away all anxiety and fear. In his arms, with his heart beating against mine and his breath warm on my neck, everything felt right in a way it had never felt before in my entire life. "I love you," he whispered against my hair, his voice low and husky but firm and full of certainty. I know it's too early, that it's completely crazy to say this after such a short time, but I've felt it since day one, since that hug. I sank deeper against him, closing my eyes and finally letting the words out, the words that had been stuck in my throat for days. I love you too. Even though it's completely insane and too fast and inexplicable, best kind of love, he said, that smile in his voice, and I felt it against my hair before he kissed me again, slower this time, savoring every second. 6 months passed, like a wonderful blur of romantic dinners and conversations that lasted until dawn, and stolen kisses in public places, and that connection that only got deeper and stronger with each day that passed. Damien had insisted on helping me financially when he saw the bills piling up on my desk. And after a lot of discussion and a lot of wounded pride on my part, many fights followed by even better reconciliations, I finally accepted that he buy me a new apartment. It was still small, nothing compared to his standards or the penthouse apartment where he lived, but it was mine and had huge windows that let in perfect natural light for working on my photos, and an extra bedroom I'd turned into a studio. More importantly, it was in a safe building, one without leaks in the ceiling or constant electrical problems. Speaking of photography, my work had literally exploded in recent months. Damien had introduced me to some of the right people, opened some doors that were locked before, connected me with clients who would never have found me on their own. But I had gone through those doors with my own talent and hard work, and the contracts I closed, the brilliant reviews I received, everything was based on my ability and the quality of my work. I was editing photos from a beautiful wedding I'd photographed the previous weekend, adjusting the light in a photo of the bride and groom dancing, when I heard the door open and the familiar sound of his footsteps. "Hi, love, how was your day?" Damien's voice, that deep voice that still made my heart jump, came from behind me before I felt his arms wrap around my waist, his chin resting comfortably on my shoulder as he looked at the computer screen. "This photo is beautiful." "Good." I leaned against him automatically, enjoying the solid and comforting warmth of his body, his smell that was already as familiar as my own. "I closed a huge contract today, national magazine, multiple editions. Thanks for the connections that helped me get to this level." "You're incredibly talented, Mia. I just opened some doors. You're the one who impressed the right people and went through those doors on your own." He kissed my neck softly, and then paused. "And speaking of news, I have one too." "What?" I turned in the swivel chair to look at him properly, and that's when I saw the expression on his face. Nervousness mixed with determination and something deeper I couldn't completely identify, something that made my heart start beating faster. And then he knelt. My heart stopped completely, the entire world seeming to freeze as I saw him take a small dark blue velvet box from his pocket, opening it with surprisingly steady hands to reveal the most beautiful ring I'd ever seen in my life, simple but absolutely elegant. A solitaire diamond that sparkled and reflected the apartment's light, as if it had stars trapped inside it. "Damien," I started, my voice already failing with emotion, but he spoke first. "I know. 6 months. It's fast, absurdly fast by any normal or sensible standard." His eyes were fixed on mine, intense and vulnerable in a way I rarely saw, showing everything he felt without any protection. "But Mia, I've loved you since that desperate hug, since the moment you asked me to hold you and I felt peace for the first time in years, and I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to waste more time without you being officially and completely mine. Forever." He took a deep breath, his voice trembling slightly. "Will you marry me, make me the happiest man on the planet, and say yes?" The tears started to fall before I even fully processed everything that was happening, before my brain caught up with my heart. "This is completely insane." The words came out half laughing, half crying. "We met because I hugged a stranger on the street during a full-blown panic attack, and you stalked me with security cameras and a private investigator and facial recognition. And now, just 6 months later, you're kneeling in my apartment asking me to marry you." A small and hopeful smile touched his lips, that smile I loved so much. "Insane, completely crazy, but it's our story, Mia. It's how we started. It's who we are. So, I started laughing through the tears, shaking my head at the absolute craziness and perfection of it all, and then threw myself from the floor straight into his arms with such force I almost knocked him over. Yes, 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 always, yes. He caught me easily, spinning with the force of the movement and my weight, laughing against my hair as I held him with everything I had, with all the love that was overflowing inside me. I love you, he said when he put me back on the floor, taking the ring from the box with hands that were trembling slightly now, sliding it onto my finger with such reverence it made my heart squeeze. More than I knew it was possible to love someone. I love you too, my favorite stalker. I teased through the happy tears that wouldn't stop falling, and he laughed in that beautiful and open way that always made my heart melt completely. I'm never going to live that down, am I? Never. I confirmed before pulling him into a kiss that promised forever, that sealed everything we were promising each other. A year later, we were at a small and intimate ceremony in a beautiful garden, just close friends and Sophia as my maid of honor, radiant in a light pink dress. She was by my side as I finished fixing the veil for the 10th time, nervous in a good way, a huge smile on my face. Who would have thought, she murmured, looking through the door to the garden where Damien was already waiting at the improvised altar, gorgeous in a navy blue suit. A desperate hug on the street turned into all this: wedding, true love, happy ending. Best hug of my life, I replied, adjusting the bouquet of white peonies one last time. And mine. Damien's voice came suddenly from the door, making both of us turn startled. He shouldn't be here yet. It was bad luck to see the bride before Ta, but from the loving look on his face, he clearly didn't care about superstitions or traditions. He came directly to me and kissed me softly, reverently. Ready to marry your favorite stalker and officially become mine forever. Sophia laughed and rolled her eyes, but was smiling, and I just smiled against his lips, my heart so full it seemed impossible to fit inside my chest. Ed forever. Epilogue. 7 months after the wedding, the apartment we now shared, bigger, more spacious, but still full of the natural light I loved, was filled with preparations for the arrival of our son. I was 7 months pregnant, my belly big and round and impossible to hide. And Damien was absolutely obsessed with every aspect of the pregnancy, reading books and asking 1,000 questions to the doctor at every appointment. His arms wrapped around me from behind, while I stood in front of the window watching the city. His big and warm hands resting on my belly with such tenderness it made my eyes burn with hormonal tears. Ready for him to be born, he murmured against my neck, kissing there softly. Nervous, terrified, but ready. I leaned against him, enjoying his strength and warmth like I always did, like I always would. With you by my side, always. And to think it all started with a desperate hug in some random alley in New York, he reflected, and I could hear the amazed smile in his voice, that tone of someone who still doesn't completely believe how life can surprise. Best impulsive decision I ever made. Asking a gorgeous stranger on the street for a hug while having a panic attack. He laughed, gently turning me in his arms to kiss me softly before kneeling and kissing my huge belly. Hi, son. Daddy here. Want to hear the story of how I met your mum? He looked up at me with that smile that still, after all this time, made my heart race like it was the first time. She hugged me. In the middle of a panic attack, in the middle of the street, she asked a complete stranger for a hug and changed absolutely everything in my life. You're really going to tell him this story? Repeatedly, I asked, running my fingers through his hair with all the love in the world, every single day. He promised, standing up and pulling me into that hug that had started absolutely everything, that had changed both our lives forever, until he memorizes every word. Forever. And in each other's arms, with our son moving gently between us and the future stretching bright and infinite ahead, I knew with absolute certainty that that desperate hug in a New York alley, that moment of pure vulnerability and unexpected connection, had been the beginning of everything I always wanted but never knew I needed. Forever.
And what was it like writing this story? When I started writing this story, I was sure I wanted to start with a woman in absolute panic asking the impossible from a complete stranger. A hug. Something so simple, but so intimate. The idea was born from a reflection on genuine human connections, in a world where we're all constantly connected digitally, but deeply alone, emotionally. What if two lost souls met at the most unlikely moment? What if a desperate hug changed everything? Mia and Damien came naturally after that. She, struggling with life and carrying abandonment traumas. He, powerful and successful on the outside, but completely broken on the inside, unable to rest or find peace. Two complete opposites who, paradoxically, complete each other in an inexplicable way. I wanted to explore that elegant dark romance, but with real emotion. Not just physical attraction, but a deep and visceral connection that defies logic. The kind of love that starts intense and stays intense. Writing their journey, from the hug to the wedding, from distrust to eternal love, was like discovering my own story while I typed. I hope you feel the same magic reading that I felt creating. And if you want to see another unexpected love story, click on the video that appears now on your screen.